Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here. Today's testimony, woo, it is a good one. I just got off of the call with Noelle Simon, and I am so looking forward to everyone hearing her story. She was raised by a cult leader and then was dramatically saved by Jesus overnight with a lot of things in between. So please be sure to listen to the entire episode. Her story is amazing. And I also want to let you know that in the description will be a link to her website where she offers Christian counseling to help others who have been through traumatic experiences such as hers. Thanks for being here. Enjoy today's episode. Hi, everyone. Before we jump into today's episode, I want to remind you that there are two ways to support the podcast. First is through the Finding Fulfillment Together store, which is now officially opened, and you can find items like the sweatshirt I'm wearing now. It says fearfully and wonderfully made. I think it's backwards in the camera, but that's okay. And there's lots of other options in there that will proclaim your Christianity to the world, perfect for you to wear or to purchase for friends and family with Christmas coming up. I hope you find some stuff in there that you like. Also, the second way is to make donations. In the link tree in the description, you will see a way to make donations, and you can do a one-time donation or a recurring monthly donation, whatever works for you. Thank you so much to those of you who have made donations. It truly means the world to me, and to those that choose to do so in the future. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I love you all. Let's jump into today's episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Finding Fulfillment Together podcast. I'm here today with a new guest. Her name is Noelle Simon, and she's here to share her testimony with us. Thank you so much for being here, Noelle.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so I'm so grateful that you reached out to me. And I know just a little snippet, you gave me a quick review of your story. And from what I know, oh my goodness, what a journey you have been through. I don't think I've ever heard anything like it, and I'm looking forward to hearing all the details. I know that some of it is probably going to be hard to talk about, but I'm grateful that you are here and have the courage and strength to share this with us. And I know there's a happy ending, so I look forward to kind of walking through this story with you. So yeah, feel free to kind of start from the beginning, from your childhood, and just let us know kind of where were you, did you have faith growing up, and we'll just walk through everything together.
Yeah, so I my faith journey has been pretty wild. I I would say that I didn't have faith as a child. Just to cut to the chase with it, really, I was born to a father who was actually a cult leader, and he believed that he was Jesus Christ as like this reincarnation. This He was the second coming. Um, and I was the firstborn. So as the firstborn, he um, he named me Jesus. So like Jesus legally. So like this name has followed me. And with that, I was part of this narrative that I was like the female side of this reincarnation of Christ. So just like how he was this reincarnation coming to save the world, and at some point the world would find out about him, right? Like he'd be on CNN World News, and everyone would finally know that he was the truth. He was God, right? That would also happen to me. So
Wow.
obviously being raised with that was very damaging in so many ways, and I now know spiritually damaging as well. Um, Him having a cult lifestyle, there was a ton of instability. There was homelessness. We were just around bad people. When I say we, like me and my siblings. Um,
How
you know,
many siblings do you have?
I have two younger brothers,
Okay.
and we're very close in age. Um, you know, and with that cult leader mentality, like he, you know, clearly was narcissistic, and you know, I was the daughter of a narcissist, right?
Hmm.
Um, so definitely had a different relationship with him than my brothers did, who were like kind of more invisible and like lumped together. Um, but yeah, so we were just, you know, around a lot of weird people that he was like basically recruiting into his following. And I like to say that he was kind of an unsuccessful cult leader. Like he wasn't very good at keeping people per se. He, you know, when he was younger, he was certainly more successful, charismatic, and able to influence people than as he got older. But yeah, we ended up being around witches, a lot of you know, drug abuse, meth addicts. So just a lot of evil, honestly.
Wow.
It
Was
was
your
just
mom involved?
yeah. So my mom has had her own like amazing turnaround story and testimony to coming to Christ. But yeah, she married him,
Mm.
right? And she was kind of like sucked into his program. And um, by the grace of God, had the courage to leave him. But it was a rough journey for her too. Um, but
Oof.
it's
Do
yeah,
you
it ended
know
up being
how,
a beautiful story as well.
yeah. Do you know how old your dad was when he started to believe this, that he was Jesus?
I've heard certain things from like certain family members, but there's been like a lot of secrecy
Mm.
in my family around it. So even to this day, like I'm not sure to what degree was it like mental illness? Like to what degree was he culpable
Mm.
in all of this? And to what degree did he kind of say, bring it on? Like, yeah, like I'll take on this. I want this power. I want, you know, I don't know what he was up to spiritually. Um, but it definitely it started younger from what I've heard, but it's pretty muddied.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So just keep going with the story here. So how old were you, I guess, when, I mean, when you started to kind of comprehend what was going on that, were you believing everything your dad told you? You had to have been at some point, right? As a child.
Yeah, so he he was like in and out of my life because he would like go on like sabbaticals, right? Like
Mm.
I'm going away for 40 days to like, you know, act as Jesus. So he wasn't super engaged. So it was like around me, um, you know, from the time that I was born. Um, but then I think I was around like 7 years old when my parents had separated. My mom was like trying her best to like get away from all of that, but was struggling with her own things. Um, but at some point, the government kind of stepped in and was like, you know, we're taking the kids.
Mm.
And we ended up living with my dad's parents, which was, you know, good in some ways, much more stability, but in other ways it was difficult, right? Like going from because we kind of like lived up in the mountains before all this, and kind of like lawlessness. Like
Mm.
there was hardly anyone living up there. It was like where people go to not have to be around the law.
Yeah.
Um, so like I don't remember going to school that much, and then, you know, being taken and like plopped into like suburbia, and like you're going to school every day, and like there's like people talking to you, and um all this structure. It was quite jarring. And this was also my first exposure to organized religion because my grandparents were Catholic.
Okay.
So we started going to Catholic church every Sunday.
So I want to, it actually triggers my question that I had. So when you were growing up, did you go to church at all? Was there like, and did you read the Bible?
No, no, no. So yeah, so my dad, like, even though he was saying basically that he was Jesus, there was not there was not a lot of Christianity going on. Like there wasn't Bible reading. Maybe he would like quote scripture here and there to kind of fit his agenda, but
Mhm.
there was no like structure to it. It was all very dark and twisted. Like
Mm.
he was charismatic to start and then very manipulative and abusive. So it really warped my view of Jesus. Like I
Yeah.
wanted nothing to do with him.
Yeah. And
So
now
when I,
you find yourself in a Catholic church.
yeah, and I didn't like it. Like I
Mhm.
was 7 years old and um I mean no way to like comprehend what I had been through, but like didn't feel good in my existence, right? Because I've since come to learn that children, just like how they're really vulnerable physically and mentally, they're vulnerable spiritually.
Mhm.
So you really need your parents there to protect that thin spiritual veil, right? And we didn't have that. I mean, like I said, we were like literally around witches. So it was like, stuff got in. And I didn't know it at the time, but
Mhm.
yeah, so being at a Catholic church, it was just uncomfortable.
So then you're living with your grandparents, you're going regularly to Catholic church. How long did that go on for?
Yeah, so we were living with our grandparents for about 8 months, and my mom was working really hard to get sober and just do everything right to get us back. She went through her own like surrender process to God, like really fully surrendering us to Him.
Mm.
Um, and once she surrendered, everything fell into place, and we got to live with her again, which was great. We loved being at our mom's, but then unfortunately, and I still have a hard time wrapping my head around this, but when there was the custody stuff going on, um, the judge, basically just said, "Oh, well, the father of the children is just he's just really religious."
Mm.
So he got to have us every weekend almost, which was
Wow.
horrible. Like it was just he was like easily set off by things, and once he was set off, he would rant for like hours on end about just like cultish nonsense, really. Um, because he wasn't free to do what he wanted anymore at that point because the courts were involved. So he
Mm.
kind of reminded me of like a caged wild animal. Like he really wanted to live his life the way that he wanted to do it, but at the same time he was like, well, I can't do this and I can't do that, and he had just had all this anger, and so it felt like treading water almost. Like during the week with my mom, things were pretty pleasant, and I mean we had all of this unaddressed trauma, so much unaddressed trauma. But there was love, there was stability, there was like school and friends and things like that. And then on the weekend, it was a different world.
Yeah. Did your mom try to like stop you from like to get custody like 100% to stop you guys from going to his place?
Once she quickly realized that things were not going well on the weekends, like she said, I'd pick you up Sunday evening and you guys just looked like zombies, like ghosts.
Mm.
And we felt that way. Like it just felt like the life was like sucked out of us. I mean, because you can't, as a kid, you can't listen to someone rant for three
Mm.
hours without shutting out and shutting down. So the problem is, she didn't have a lot of money to do what she needed to do to get that going, but her mom stepped in and helped out. Um, so it's kind of this weird tension between my mom's side of the family and my dad's side of the family, who like my grandparents were funding my dad. And I think they meant well, right? They wanted us in their life too. Um, but it ended up really harming us. And if they hadn't had funded like a lawyer and all this, my dad wouldn't have been able to put up that fight, and we wouldn't have. It was a couple years at least of a custody battle, and it
Mhm.
was really tense. It made everything kind of worse on the weekends with my dad.
Yeah.
It's since, there's been a lot of healing in my family on both sides. So that's why like I hesitate to, say certain things about my dad's side of the family, because like we've come a long way,
Yeah.
and they've seen things differently, and but that is how it happened.
Yeah.
So
So how did your faith then start developing? I mean, I can only imagine you have this distorted view of Jesus that I can't even imagine how twisted that must have been. But then you see, your Catholic grandparents and now your mom, surrendering to Jesus and you're seeing the fruit of that, the positives of that. So it's a lot of different things happening. So then how did your personal faith develop?
yeah, so it was very tumultuous, a lot of big emotions with it and confusion with it. Because I was miserable inside because of everything that I experienced. Um, Basically like from birth to seven, right? Like that's all of like your early childhood.
Yeah.
So it was like at my dad's house, and I was fighting this whole Jesus thing at the same time. Cause like I knew once I was like in normal society, it was like that narrative was like dropped, except by him, right?
Mhm.
During
Yeah.
like his rants and all that type of thing. So, he would rant, and I would just like in my head be like, no, 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 no. And I would just like fight it internally.
Mm.
Because that's all I felt like I could, right? Like an 8-year-old can't be like, no, like
Right.
it's not gonna, I mean, maybe by the grace of God, but I didn't have that really accessible yet. So, um, internally there was like all this anger that couldn't come out on the weekends to resist this narrative of Jesus and him being like this special God thing. Um, and then my mom would have us some weekends, and whenever she had us some weekends, which we were like super excited about, um, she'd take us to church on Sunday.
Hmm.
And that's that's when all the anger would kind of come out, because it could,
Hmm.
right? Like that
Yeah.
rebellion. Um, it just because I was still carrying all this darkness in me, and it wasn't logical how I felt about it. Obviously, like I was a kid, but it just felt like I'm suffering and I'm showing up to church and everyone else is happy, it seems like.
Mm.
And like I'm a kid and you guys are adults and no one's saving me.
Mm. Yeah.
Like no one's talking about this. Like the court stuff was going on, but like it wasn't logical, but it was just like this feels hypocritical.
Yeah.
It feels like I'm not being cared for. So I didn't feel the love, basically. It was not accessible.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and was your name still were you going by Sheezus?
I never went by Jesus.
Okay. Okay.
So yeah, it legally was my first name. Um, and so like on my medical records, and luckily at school, they let me go by Noelle. Like it
Okay.
wasn't an issue, thank
Yeah, yeah.
God. Um,
Is that your middle name or was it? I mean,
yeah, Noelle's my middle name. Now it's my first name. Like
okay.
everything's good now.
Yeah, yeah.
God like closed the book of this all.
Yeah.
But yeah, it did end up coming out in middle school. Someone like found out, which is like a whole different story. But for the most
Okay.
part, people didn't know, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it created some awkward situations, and I mean, like I literally like it would my whole body would cringe like if I had to say it, like if I had to go to the airport, right, and
Yeah.
travel, like Jesus, like oh,
Uh,
I hated even saying the word Jesus, honestly. Like even after my conversion, it took some time for me to be like, Jesus. Okay, because it was just like I
Yeah.
just avoided all of it so
Mm,
much.
that's just awful. Okay, so now, okay, you're going to church with your mom on Sundays, full of all this emotion because you just don't understand, why no one is coming to take care of you or save you, like you said. And you're full of anger and frustration, not understanding. So then what happens from here?
So, I would say like I was atheist at that point. Like I was just so angry and um it just got worse as I got older. Like I was just upset to even be alive. Like
Mm,
I was like I realized like, oh, it's selfish that my parents even had me and like brought me into their life and into life in general. Because it's not just like, oh, my situation was bad. It was just life is bad because you're gambling with your kid's life. You don't
mm,
know, like, when you bring a kid into this life, what they're going to have to go through. And I didn't yet have the awareness. Like, I knew my childhood was bad and special, um, but it was also the only thing I knew. So I didn't really fully comprehend that, like, people are happy. People like being alive.
yeah.
Um, so yeah, I was atheist. Um, I I just was a mess. Like I had so many problems. On the surface, it looked good, right? Like I was really good at school, even though I basically missed out on school for like the first 7 years of my life.
Mm,
And a lot of human interaction, to be honest. Somehow I did well in school, which is such a blessing.
mm,
And I was good at sports. So on the surface, I looked like a kid that was doing really well. But underneath the surface, I was miserable. I wanted to like just claw my way out of my own skin. Like I hated my body. I soon after I like started menstruating, I developed premenstrual dysphoric disorder. I'm not sure if
mm,
you're aware of what that is, but it's
mm.
basically PMS on steroids.
Um,
It's really rough. They call it like um like a werewolf syndrome where it's like you're pretty good for 2 weeks, and then you ovulate and then you're like a different person practically for the other 2 weeks
wow.
in a nutshell. And I mentioned that because I'll get to that like post conversion, how
Hmm.
that changed. But yeah, so I basically oscillated between like wishing that I had never been born to like active like suicidal ideation. That
Wow.
was my spectrum of existence. Like
Yeah.
contentment, happiness, feeling at ease was like it just flickered.
Mm,
Was really not very common for me.
yeah. So you're just like, I'm just seeing it as you being just suffocated by evil spirits. Like
Yes.
in the spiritual world, you are just in the darkness. And I think the way you described it, like a lot of people can relate to that of not wanting to be in your own skin. And I hear that actually a lot in testimonies that, before Jesus, that people just, the suicidal thoughts, just not wanting to be here. Just everything is negative, and like you said, just these flickering moments of happiness that don't last. And that's in my mind the definition of spiritual darkness, like not knowing Jesus, like you're going to be in that darkness.
Yeah, it makes so much sense to look back on it and like, oh, like clearly that
Mm,
there was like spiritual darkness, demonic
mm,
influence and all sorts of stuff. Um and it's kind of nice to know that. But like it really, I mean, I was miserable. Like
mm.
it was just, and I tried like when I got into high school, like I tried reading the Bible before. I started with Genesis and I was like, what is going on? This is stupid. Of course, but I
Yeah.
had like some openness to it, but there was just so much like anger with it, you know? It was
Yeah.
so conflated with what I had been put through. Um, I guess I wasn't ready. I got into like meditation. Um,
Mhm.
so I was like, okay, like I can work on it, my anxiety. So I definitely felt empowered starting in high school to um help myself get better. I at least had that going on, like
Yeah.
a willingness to work hard and like, oh, like if I eat better, then I'm gonna feel better because I like learned about the brain gut connection from
Yeah.
a younger age.
Mhm.
Um, I definitely had an eating disorder, so
Mhm.
that was twisted too and warped. But I was trying. I was definitely
Mhm.
trying. Um, my mom at that point had gotten into A Course in Miracles. So she had started with church and hopped to a couple different churches, but Jesus at church was a big part of her story.
Mhm.
Like had real experiences with Jesus, but then somehow got over to A Course in Miracles. Um, so
Yeah.
and like The Secret and things like
Mhm.
that. So that I was introduced to that in high school as
Yeah.
well and was
And just
kind
to
of
give a
on the
quick synopsis for anyone that doesn't know, A Course in Miracles, the way I describe it and what I've been told about it anyway, because I read like a third of it before coming to know who Jesus really is. I was into it too. I was reading it every day, doing the course, right? You do your
Mhm.
exercises every day. And what it basically, well, what it is someone was believed that they were channeling Jesus himself. And they wrote this book thinking Jesus was telling them, this is what I got wrong, or this is what they got wrong in the Bible. And this is what I really meant. And there's this whole book called A Course in Miracles that's supposedly channeled by Jesus that twists the word of God in a demonic way, and actually tells you that sin is not real, evil is not real. It's just it's so Satan because Satan takes the truth and just twists it enough, just enough to make it seem nice and pretty and make you like, look, this is better. And then you go towards that way and turn away from the truth of Jesus Christ. So yeah, A Course in Miracles is a very slippery slope. But just like The Secret, just like
Mhm.
the law of attraction, it all feels so good and looks so good. Who wants to believe that there's sin and evil? Like, we're not sinful by nature. No one wants to believe that. So yeah, anyway, yeah. So I understand because I was on the same path. So Course in Miracles, Secret. So that, of course, now your mom is into that. So it's infiltrating into your life, of course.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like I wasn't actively doing it. I did end up doing it in college. Like I yeah, probably got like a third of the way through. I had some spiritual experiences with it and I was like,
Hmm.
"Oh wow." Like
Yeah.
this is interesting. But yeah, I looking back on it, like that was kind of, the start of like spiritual bypassing too, of like, because there was already like how do you talk about like what what my childhood was, right? Like my
Yeah.
dad's side of the family did not talk about it, right? It was just I don't know how you even start, right? But even my mom's side of the family, like there's just like a lot of like denial and just not wanting to go there, which I can understand. But then with the Course in Miracles and like the law of attraction and all this stuff, it was like another layer of bypassing the reality of what we were living in, all
Hmm.
that heaviness and hurt and whatnot. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Did you go to like traditional therapy at this time?
So I actually, when I was in middle school, I remember asking my mom to go to therapy. I was like, I want help with like the disordered eating.
Hmm.
And so that was like the first time that I mean, we had like court mandated therapy.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of therapy. So some therapists much better than others. Um, but yeah, that therapy didn't end up working out so well, but over the years, like, what I did find to be more helpful was like the more body-based approach because my emotions were so big. It was like I just needed someone to like ride the wave with me, right?
Mm.
Because I became so afraid of my emotions.
Mm.
So I did somatic experiencing, brain spotting, which is really similar to EMDR, which was helpful in like calming my nervous system down. But it's interesting because, like, looking back on it, I was getting more regulated in a sense, but I wasn't getting less miserable,
Mm.
you
Yeah.
know?
Interesting. Okay, so now dabbling in starting to get into new age things, basically. I mean, some of it is some of it's body based, which I'm not against that at all, but then when it comes to the Course in Miracles and Secret and all that stuff, so you're starting to slip into the new age stuff. Did you get like deeper into new age spirituality at this point? Like I know you said you started doing meditation.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was really part of like the atheism stuff was like I was like really into science and like the
Hmm.
scientific way of thinking about things. So um, I went off to college. Academia was really important to me. I was like, I'm good at this. Um, if it's it was really important for me to like know what's true and what's not because I my dad had like delusional beliefs about things, right? So it was like, okay, I want to be as far away from that as possible. So facts are good. I like
Hmm.
facts. And spirituality didn't really fit in with that. So even A Course in Miracles and like the law of attraction, there was like this pulling towards it. Like there was an attraction towards it, but I still wanted just solid evidence. I was more interested in that in the beginning of my college years. So
Hmm.
there was like a bit of dabbling, but it didn't super stick.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I can understand that. I was definitely that same way. Like I only believed what science could prove before
Mhm.
getting into anything spiritual. Like I didn't really dabble in anything spiritual till I was like maybe 35 when I started messing around with mushrooms. And then I was like, there's something here,
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, so I understand that thinking. Okay, so then take us through what comes next in the story.
Yeah, so I was in college. I felt like I was hitting a wall. Like I just couldn't keep up with life's expectations of me anymore. Like my being okay for 2 weeks at a time and then ovulating and not barely being able to get to my classes. Like
Mm.
it was
Wow.
I had like all the symptoms of PMDD pretty much. So it was just getting so difficult. I didn't know that I had PMDD yet.
Mm.
So once I found that out, I started, taking medications like typical antidepressants. Birth control pills is actually what helped me the most because if I didn't ovulate, then I didn't have PMDD.
Ah, okay.
So, kind of almost a blessing because it was like a band-aid,
Hmm.
but I wish I could like not have gone through if I would have just gotten to Jesus sooner, of course it would have been better.
Yeah,
So
I think we can all say that.
yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I was introduced to uh, the field of trauma research through my coursework at
Mm.
university. So
Okay.
I came across the Adverse Childhood Experiences study. It's a
Mm.
huge Kaiser study showing this very strong correlation between the amount of traumatic experiences you had as a kid and your chances of developing physical diseases on top of like mental health problems. So this was like a breakthrough study and it was on a massive scale. And we everyone in the class like took the quiz to see, kind of where we would fall on that. And my number was extremely high, right? And I noticed other people's numbers were not extremely high.
Mm.
And that was a big moment for me. That's when I was like, I'm traumatized.
Mhm.
That's why I'm miserable. And like it all made
Mm.
sense.
Yeah.
So it felt. So that was the start of the trauma work.
Gotcha.
So it,
Okay.
it started in a secular, westernized medical way, but it eventually got to New Age. So it
Gotcha.
started with doing all the things that I'm supposed to do. I was a very good student of mental health, right? And I wanted to be on some level I wanted to be a counselor or a therapist. In some ways I resisted it. But yeah, so I was doing all the meditations, like literally everything. Like my whole life revolved around it. Like I was like checking it off because I was like, I just want to get to the other side. Like
Yeah.
I know my whole life I was like, there has to be a way out of this misery, but I just didn't know which way was up.
Mm.
And then this felt like the way out. So I was like, I'm gonna do everything that I can to not be miserable. Like, why would I not do that?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And then I came across ketamine assisted therapy. So
Interesting.
in between the ACEs, like the trauma research and ketamine, that's when I was doing like the somatic experiencing,
Hmm.
um, and more of that like just getting okay with my emotions, which really was helpful in a lot of ways, but it wasn't, nothing was ever enough. I was like, I'm
Yeah.
still suffering, like I'm still really struggling just to like move forward in life. And I felt like I had all this potential and I just couldn't. My anxiety was so bad. I
Mm.
just couldn't move forward. And came across ketamine. The research looked good, right?
Yep.
And I ended up moving forward with that.
Okay.
And I remember the days leading up to my first session, I was really nervous about it, right? Because I was an extremely anxious person and I had never done something psychedelic like. And this was IV ketamine too. It wasn't
Mm.
like the nasal spray, which
Oh, wow.
doesn't have effects as strong. So I was nervous about it and I just really didn't want to have a bad experience. But I also really, I was like, I just really want to know that there's more to life than the physical.
Mm.
So I said a prayer basically that was like to whatever spirit was real, like, please just show me that you're real. Like, show me that that spirit is real, you know, and
Yeah.
just help me. So that like opened the door. Like that in itself felt like a spiritual experience, like something shifted. And then actually going through with the ketamine, I ended up having spiritual experiences and I was like, oh, wow, okay, like spirit's real. It's go time, basically.
And what were those experiences like?
Well, my first ketamine experience was, I wouldn't say it was a good trip. Like I had the opportunity to have a therapist sit in with me, and I was like, absolutely, yes, I want that. Like,
Yeah.
but it wasn't quite enough to like feel safe with it. It just felt too intense for me. Like
Mm.
I'm a pretty sensitive person, I guess. So I just felt like kind of out of control and it was just a lot to take in, right?
Yeah.
But it was like, okay, that was definitely something. There was something spiritual about it. And then that just increased each time. So I remember it might have been like the second session. I actually had my therapist in the session with me, which was really helpful.
Mm.
And it was a lower dose too. But I just remember experiencing that everything is spirit.
Mm.
Every little particle, everything of life is spiritual. And as I came down from the ketamine, it was like even the physical is spiritual, but it's just like denser
Hmm.
spirit or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it kind of gives you, just from my experience of psychedelics, I never did ketamine, but like it gives you this just like comfort in some crazy way because it's like we're all one, it's all connected, it's all energy, it's
Mhm.
all love, and it just makes you just, I don't know, for me anyway, I felt like this comfort in knowing that there, like you said, you just want to know that there's a spiritual realm, that it's not just this, it's not just the suffering, there's more. So yeah, it's almost like you got what you asked for. You got to know there is a spiritual. And did that bring you peace? Did that bring you comfort?
It did, yeah. Whenever I had a spiritual experience, it brought me comfort. And
Hmm.
I was kind of addicted, like hooked on having those spiritual experiences. And because they did come fairly often. And it was just like, yeah, of course I want to have more spiritual experiences. And then the whole narrative that goes along with that is like the more you have them, the higher up you're getting, basically,
Mhm.
right? Like the
Yeah.
better you're doing in the first place. So it just it opened up a whole new world of things to explore. And I was so thirsty for knowledge. Like I'm a curious person, so I was
Mhm.
just like reading like crazy and like reaching out to groups. And I mean, like I had this, so this was like kind of around COVID time. And I just like did a deep dive into stuff. And it was like this whole like year and a half, 2 years of just it's almost like this alternative life, right? Because I was like
Yeah.
super sciencey and then I was like super new age.
Mm.
And I was living out of state, so like my family, um, and my now husband's family didn't really know like what I was up to. But yeah, it ended up being like I was in ayahuasca circles. I didn't do ayahuasca. Something was telling me like, no,
Yeah.
not yet, type
Yeah.
of thing. But I was definitely in that circle doing like herbalism stuff. I really
Mhm.
liked that, like the green witchcraft type of stuff.
Mhm. I was told
It
that I was a green witch. I was by a tarot card reader. Oh, that's funny.
Good to know. Yeah, like okay.
Oh
But
my
yeah,
gosh,
no,
you just reminded me of that. I forgot about that.
it isn't it amazing how like after my conversion, like I didn't have like there was like a block. Like I couldn't remember what I believed in New Age and like what the heck I
Well,
was
there's just
doing.
so much, it's so much, and it just stems, it's like a web. It just keeps going out and out and out. There's so many different things you can get into, and
Oh, it's insane.
yeah. So anyway, so what were you, so the herbalism you were into, you were hanging around ayahuasca, but didn't actually go into that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Definitely, really leaning into like the women's groups and
Mhm.
divine feminine type of thing.
Yeah.
I was really uncomfortable with being a woman. That was something that I really struggled with. So being introduced to the new age stuff and like the new age beliefs about what a witch actually is, like, oh, it's actually like the patriarchy twists it, right?
Yeah, oh
And
yeah, it's women empowerment. Like that's all,
right, right,
the
right.
witch movement was just empowering women and the feminine.
Mhm.
And but what I find really interesting about that looking back is like it did feel very empowering, and I wanted to like step into my womanhood and not be afraid of my sexuality. But as
Mhm.
I look at it from the outside now, it's all very sexual and all very sinful, and like wearing less and less clothes because it's all about woman empowerment, and it's just, yeah, it's so dark really, but when you're in it it feels so light.
Mhm. Oh, it's just it's so amazing like the how good it feels now and like the actual freedom that I have now. Like yeah, with like the clothing, I love being modest. It
Hmm.
feels so much better.
Yeah. Yeah.
It feels like some level of like protection, but not like I don't even like calling it that because there's almost like this like, oh, I need to be protected, but it's just like this safety, this ease and reassurance that like yeah, I'm good.
Yeah, and I look at it as like my body is like sacred. I am a temple
Yeah.
for the Holy Spirit. Like seeing what's under my clothes and getting like intimate with me, like that is not for anyone but my husband.
I love that it's no one's business what my body
Yeah.
looks like. Like I
Yeah.
love it. It's
Exactly. It's not
really
anyone's
great.
business. But yeah, when you're in this new age, again, empowering the divine feminine and all of that, it feels as if you're more empowered by taking off your clothes. And it's just so
Hmm.
twisted. It's so twisted.
Yeah.
So anyway, okay, you're getting into all that divine feminine work. Um, yeah. Did you do any like priestess training or anything like that?
No, I didn't. The only training that I did was Hakomi, which I
Hmm, I
don't
don't know
know.
that.
So
Mm-mm.
It's Hakomi mindful somatic psychotherapy.
Okay.
So I was kind of like, okay, I do want to do therapy. Like I want to help people heal. I want to help people do trauma work and all that type of
Mm.
stuff. Um, and And I was like, I don't know if I want to do somatic experiencing or if I want to do Hakomi, because I actually was doing Hakomi with a therapist during this time. So that was like another way that like doors were kind of opening. Even the word Hakomi is it's an ancient Hopi, like Native American uh, language.
Okay.
And it means it came to the founder in a dream, of
Hmm.
course.
Yeah.
And it means something like where do you stand in relation to this realm or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so there's pieces of it that I think are good, but get twisted.
Mm-hmm.
So I was doing that I chose that training.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and after my conversion, I ended up quitting, which was, I really felt like I needed to. But at the same time, like I spent all this money on it. Um, but I felt like I got what I needed out of it, like what was good. And because I did one last training and I was like, oh, yeah, this is not compatible.
Mm.
This is not compatible with Christianity for sure.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So how long did you spend in doing all of those things, all the new age practices?
Yeah, I think it was about a year and a half to 2 years. And it's just crazy like how quickly, like how deep I got with it so quickly.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, yeah, like if I wasn't struggling as much as I was, I probably would have gotten even deeper with it.
Hmm.
But I was doing a lot of reading and exploring on my own.
Okay.
So,
And during this time, I mean, I can speak to the fact that I felt as though I was getting real healing from all of the things
mhm.
that I was doing. So, I mean, like, how did you feel? Like, did you feel like you were coming out of your trauma and like, like what were your feelings during this time?
Oh yeah, no, I definitely felt like, yeah, every therapy session I was healing trauma and making progress, and every day like I was checking off those things that I was supposed to do, and
Hmm.
it was feeling better, but I wasn't really getting better. Like I said, like in some ways I was getting more regulated, like I was able to be calmer, but like my mind, like I was tortured. Like mentally, there was just this like the flashbacks of my childhood and just like this the darkness and just the twisted, like I just couldn't feel okay. There was
Mm.
just like this incessant um yeah, like evil like messing with me and I didn't know it.
Right. You don't
So
recognize that
it
at the time. Yeah.
no, oh my gosh. But yeah, so it was like looking back on it, it was like whack-a-mole or
Mm.
like peeling away like layers of an infinite onion. It was like I just kept going deeper and deeper and I'd heal trauma and then another one would pop up and it was just it literally was never ending.
Yeah.
And I didn't
Yeah.
and I wasn't even aware. So it was insanity.
Yeah,
It
I've
was
heard it
insanity.
described as like they meaning like, the demonic forces, the evil forces that are all involved in all of this, they'll heal something that they know you want healed. They'll give you whatever healing you're looking for, but then they'll bring something else up or develop something else within you that, and it's from deep within your childhood that you didn't know about, but now here it is, and you have
Mhm.
to deal with this now. And it's just like you said, this infinite onion. You're peeling and peeling and peeling, and it's just never ending. Or hamster wheel is another, and then you have to
Mhm.
keep going back. Like whatever therapy you're getting into, like for me, it was ayahuasca, you have to keep going back for more and more healing. There's no end to it. And then I was trying, I don't know if this was your goal, but my goal was to try to raise my consciousness and
Mhm.
align my chakras to try to communicate with spirit. And, again, there's no, it's just, you can always keep going higher and higher and higher. There's no end to this consciousness.
Mhm. Yeah, I laughed when you said the chakra thing because that brought me back to like um I used to think chakras were like the stupidest thing ever. And then with all this new age stuff, it was like, oh,
Mhm.
well, no, this is probably real. And so I went and got my chakras, I don't know, readjusted or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And it was not a super pleasant experience. It felt pretty uncomfortable. Because, okay, so back to my dad. Um, his cult thing was like, he called it like a ministry,
Hmm.
right? and it was like a ministry of healing people. So he felt like he had healing powers.
Mhm.
And from what I've heard, right, and I cannot verify one way or another, um, there was healings, right? Like, supposedly, I heard from a family member that like there was a blind man who was in the hospital. He visited him at the hospital, and he wasn't blind anymore.
Whoa.
So I don't know, right? I wasn't there, but there were a lot of stories like that, and I think for that reason, my dad was able to like pull people into the ministry. He was really big on never accepting money, which
Mm.
in some ways I'm like, it would have been nice if you did because it would have, created some more stability. But um oh, where was I going with that? Yeah, so basically when I got into the new age thing, I was like, oh, my dad wasn't Jesus. Like, I mean, I already knew that, but like he was doing Reiki.
Mhm.
It's like, and I was like, oh, okay. But
Yeah.
he was like twisted about it. It was all about his ego and
Yeah.
all that. So he was just doing Reiki, but he was doing it wrong.
Mm.
Right. So
Wow.
it felt like all these pieces to my life were like falling into place.
Mhm.
And so I ended up like doing the Reiki thing and and I remember laying down in bed that night and I felt them like swirling. Like I had like
Mm.
a real experience of like feeling my chakras and like this energy swirling around them, which
Yeah.
now I'm like, oh, that is so creepy,
Mhm.
right? Because like
Yeah.
something was making me have that experience.
Yeah.
Like, what the heck did I let in?
I know. And that's what I always say because people are like, what, you just think it was all fake? I'm like, no, no, it was all
No.
very, very real. The spiritual realm is very, very real. And if you don't know Jesus, it is very, very dark. And if you're playing around and trying to mess with your energies and with the spiritual realm without knowing Jesus, without having the Holy Spirit, you're messing with demonic forces, but it is very, very real. Can they like bring some healing and some peace? Yes, but it's not lasting and it's all counterfeit. It's all
Mhm.
a copy. This is what I'm realizing lately. This is like all new revelation for me that each one of these new age spiritual practices are all counterfeits of something real that you can actually get from the one
Mhm.
true God if you put your faith in him. Like for example, there's people that can do laying on of hands with the power of the Holy Spirit and heal people. And then there's Reiki, where there is healing done with people's hands, but it's not through Jesus and it's not lasting. And again, it's just going to bring up something deeper within them. And you're inviting an evil spirit into that person and into yourself through messing with these evil spirits. So it's like they just create these counterfeits and they just reel people into the false healing and leaning them away from the truth of Jesus. So that's kind of an interesting revelation I'm realizing because we'll get into this later, I guess, but like I don't want to like be afraid of spirituality now, and that's what New Age can do. When you're getting out of New Age and realizing, oh my gosh, Jesus has been the truth the whole time, you don't want to now be afraid of the spirituality of the Holy Spirit, and that's what Satan has done is really made a lot of people fear that almost because there's so much evil that's done through the counterfeit.
No, for sure. Yeah. And I saw some of your podcasts on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like the fear of spirituality and like mysticism.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I definitely went through post
Mm-hmm.
conversion, especially being in the counseling field. I'm like, what do I take from my training and what do I leave behind?
Yeah.
Because like I do feel like there's more to counseling than just talking about things.
Yeah.
Uh, Talk therapy is great, but it's not my niche, right? Um, but what you're saying reminds me, it reminds me of like those fairy tales where it's like that the theme is, yeah, you can use magic, but it comes with a price.
Yeah. Like the Disney movies tell you. Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah. Oh my gosh. And that's awful. Because if you know Jesus and you're filled with the Holy Spirit, there is no price to using his holy power. Like, you just need to be in alignment with his will and stay connected to him at all times. Keep your eyes on Jesus.
Hmm.
Man, twisted. Okay, so now let's get to the good part. How do you now come out of New Age and let go of this fear of Jesus? Like, how did you come to faith in Jesus?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I reached this point um in my new age journey where it just kind of hit me that like I can't keep doing this. Like I have to surrender control. And I did. And it was hard. But I surrendered control. And I wasn't even surrendering control like specifically to God. I wasn't at that point yet. But I just let go. I was like something I can't do this anymore. I'm I can't be the one to change it because I've done everything that I can.
Mm, yeah.
And when I did that, it opened up the door to a different life, right? So in my case, it was specifically, we were living, my boyfriend at the time, now my husband, we were living in Virginia. Um, we're from California, so we had the choice to either move to Virginia or move to Florida. I didn't
Mhm.
want to move to Florida. I was like, we're moving to Virginia. And he kind of just put up with that. And we moved to Virginia. And that's when I did the new age spiral and it
Mhm.
just sucked, honestly. Um, so I was kind of at that point, I like just surrendered and I was like, you know what? Like, if our lease was like almost up, I was like, if you want to move to Florida, like, I never thought that I would live in Florida, but if you want to, like, whatever. I'm exhausted. I'm tired of controlling things.
Yeah.
So one thing kind of led to another, and this this housing opportunity, um, like the right house for us, like opened up, and it was like a week and a half before um, my conversion experience that we like found out like okay the house is going through, like we're moving. I was like,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, like I gotta like put in my notice, I gotta pack. And it was just like hit the ground running type of feeling, right? And I was going through my stuff, trying to like declutter and minimize. And I came across this book on near death experiences. And it was a book written by an engineer who became Christian. And I had bought it years ago. And the bookmark was in like the last chapter. It was
Mhm.
at the start of the last chapter, and it was called like City of Jerusalem or something like that, referring to heaven. And so I had read that book all the way, almost all the way through, as like wanting to be convinced that there was something on the other side.
Mhm.
And it did convince me. Like I was like, okay, there's more, there's probably life after death.
Mhm.
But when it got to that chapter, I was like, I can't, because I had mostly like A Course in Miracles beliefs about death that like when we die, like yeah, there's something more after this, but it's like we're all gonna become one
Mhm.
type of thing. So this whole like heaven thing like really didn't resonate with me. So I put the bookmark in it and I left it alone. And but then that that day I was like, and I picked it up and I started reading through it about like this, yeah, like what heaven is like. And like it's like this city of jewels, right? And it's like beautiful.
Mhm.
And there the words in the page just kind of seemed alive.
Mhm.
Like there was just something really beautiful and pure feeling about reading it. And I was like, oh, like, hmm. And it just kind of like cracked open the door a little bit.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, I'm gonna keep this in the keep pile.
Yeah.
I like initially like chucked it, but I was like, no. Yeah, so that kind of did something.
Mhm.
I didn't think too much about it, but and then I think it might have been that night where I was laying in bed and I was on my phone scrolling through Instagram and I came across this post by Caroline Dooner, I think is her name. And I had been following her because she was an anti-diet person. So I
Okay.
was like involved in that. I was like, yeah, I eat whatever I want,
Yep.
again, like against this like eating disorder culture. Um, but she had this post about like a Jesus situation. And I was like, a Jesus situation? Like, what is that? So I clicked on it and I started reading um this article, and it just like pulled me in. Like I resonated with like everything she was saying about, because I guess she was into New Age. Like
Mhm.
while doing this anti-diet stuff, she has a book called like The F It Diet or something.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know much about her, and I don't like, I'm not even really on Instagram, but it was definitely a blessing to come across um this post from her. So I'm like reading it, and she's just like talking about how like, you know, she grew up Catholic and like things didn't resonate with her, and like Jesus people are weird, and like there's all this like cringy stuff or whatever. But yet I have this Jesus situation unfolding. And I was like, okay, well, I definitely resonate with like, yeah, Jesus people are weird and like all this stuff. Um, so it was just like hitting the nail on the head, and I just like kept getting pulled in to this article, and she started talking about how like she'd been into new age stuff, and then like friend by friend started opening up to her about like these demonic attacks that they were having, and it just really made her like start to question things. And it was kind of putting me on edge reading the article, because I was like, I didn't believe in dark stuff. And I
Mhm.
was like, if it does exist, I'm not touching it, right? Like I haven't been dabbling in that, not interested. I have nothing to worry about, so I thought. But
Mhm.
this was kind of saying not so fast. Um, so it was pretty creepy. I was creeped out like reading these stories. And then I could have sworn I was trying to find the article, but I could have sworn she said something like Satan is the master of deception,
Mhm.
and he masquerades as love and light.
Yeah, it's in the Bible. That was one of the verses that got me. Is Satan masquerades as an angel of light.
But he's a wolf in sheep's clothing,
Yep.
you know? And it was at that moment I feel like I gasped. Like it was just like it just clicked, and in like time as I know it like stopped. It was just instantaneously I was surrounded by demons.
Mm.
And I couldn't see them, thank God, but I could feel them. Like it was so much more real than like sitting here right now. It was and I could sense that there was like almost kind of shaking, like remembering it. Um there was many. There was many. And the sense that I got was that the veil was lifted for me to experience that, and they weren't the ones lifting it. They didn't want it to be lifted. And I was just paralyzed with fear. Like it felt like I was chilled to my bones with fear. I'd never been so scared before. Um, and it was spooky because it was just pure evil in my room, like pure sinister energy. Like the thickness of it was insane. But it was the same feeling in my childhood up in the mountains, surrounded by all those people in darkness, but times like 1,000, infinity, but the same flavor, right?
Mhm.
I was like, okay, that was evil. But I'm laying there surrounded by them, and it just like it just clicked, like everything that I had been doing, I had let them in. I was completely fooled. It was such a humbling experience. I felt as tiny as a speck of dust floating in the universe. I felt so tiny and so helpless, and power, like I couldn't do anything. They're invisible. I can't even see them,
Yeah.
but I can feel them so much. What am I possibly going to do, right?
Mhm.
Uh, and then I remembered the article had said like people who had these demonic experiences, they just called on Jesus for protection. So I did that. Like I remembered, oh yeah, like Jesus. I was like, you're God. You're God 100%. I'm not. Like
Yeah.
any inkling of this Jesus thing was dead. Right?
Mm.
Because that's part of what came up. What was confusing about my new age experience was like, okay, well, I'm having these spiritual experiences. Like, what's true about this Jesus thing? And being like, no, that's not, like, we're not even going to go there type of thing. But the devil was playing with me,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But so in that moment, I was like completely humbled and I was just like, I'm not in control here at all. And I give everything to you. Like it was just full surrender, instantaneous. I was like, I'm Christian 100%. Like there's no doubt about it. Um, and so like I sensed that he was with me too. Um, and as soon as I did that, my room went back to normal and everything, they were just gone. It was effortless for him. Okay. Like that's all I needed to hear.
Wow.
I just remember I needed to pee so bad. Like I was just like, I am so, but I was like paralyzed. Like I couldn't move still. I was like, what just happened, right? I don't know if it was literally a second, like if this all happened in a second, or if this was like 5 or 10 minutes. Like I have no idea. It was so surreal. I was
Wow.
completely sober. Like it was insane. And then of course I went downstairs to like tell tell my husband. Um and I mean, I just had to say it. I was just like I don't even know what I said, right? But he was just like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
And I had him like I was still freaked out. Like I was freaked out to go back in that room. Um so I was like, can you please like sleep next to me?" Like until at least until I fell asleep. And I was like practically in like the fetal position. And I just prayed myself to sleep. Like I was praying, praying, praying until I woke up. Like I just remember waking up in the same position, like my knees were sore. I was just like, but I woke up completely renewed,
Mm.
like fresh eyes. Like I literally, like it was lighter around me. Like it was almost in a sense like difficult to have my eyes like fully open because the brightness of this new life was compared to the darkness that I was in. But I felt like I was finally like on the surface, like breathing air. Whereas before I was like submerged in dark waters and I was frantically swimming and I didn't even know which way was up
Mm.
and now I was like I broke through the surface and I was like, oh, there's light and there's fresh air and like I just feel clean and I remember feeling kind of like, oh my gosh, like I can't even dip down into my subconscious like I could before. That's all I was doing. It was
Yeah.
like, nope, you're up here now. You're up here and you're looking on the horizon, like you're interacting with the horizontal, like for now.
Wow.
Like we're that's all we're doing. So it was everything was gone. All the trauma, the anxiety, the phobias. I was crippled by certain phobias and I was trying so hard in therapy to get over them. And the PMDD stuff ended up, I eventually got off birth control pills, which was
Wow.
a little scary to do because I was like, I don't want to lose my job, like if it's still
Yeah.
there, but I got off of them and didn't have any issues. So like literally everything in my life was better overnight. And I know that's not everyone's story, but for
Right.
me, that is what happened. Like I stopped doing therapy. I wasn't on any medication. I was just good. I
Did
was
you
good to go.
immediately walk away from all the new age stuff? Like, did you know right
Oh,
away?
oh yeah. I grabbed all my crystals and I chucked them into this forest. My brother was like, "What are you doing?" Because we were like living together at the time.
Yeah.
And I told him because my brothers were like there when it happened. They weren't in my room, but like I
Yeah.
told them what happened practically like immediately. And that really planted a seed for them. And one of my brothers saw me chucking the crystals and um so they were kind of there all along the way. I got rid of those books. Like I threw them in the trash. I kind of wanted to burn them, but I was like, let's not cause
Yeah.
a scene here.
I burned mine. I burned everything.
Yeah, no, I got rid of it. I mean, it was done. Like it was instantly over.
Isn't that amazing? Like that, wow. Because you're right, it doesn't happen for everyone that it's overnight like that. But there is a switch where all of a sudden you just realize like everything you were doing was not of God,
Hmm.
you know? And it's just so amazing how he does that. It's I could cry. Just unbelievable how he does that. He just, like you said, the veil is lifted, your eyes are open, and you see everything for what it really is. And all you had to do was turn to him. He was
Hmm.
there the whole
The
time.
whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like looking back on like all these horrible experiences I had in life, or like what felt like a horrible experience, and I was like, wow, you were there, but I just wasn't letting you in.
Right, right. He's a
I was so
gentleman. He
mad at
will
you
wait.
for feeling bad, but it was me that was like, no.
Yeah, same. I rejected him, you know, so how could he possibly come in and save you if you're rejecting him?
Hmm. Yeah, I
Oh
heard
my
someone say
God.
like he's such a gentleman,
Mm-hmm.
like he is not gonna force anything,
Right.
and it's so true. I mean, I he was just waiting for me to be willing, and that article did it. It was like
Wow,
I
that's
was just like,
incredible.
okay, like in that moment, I was completely willing to take in the truth that like I was fooled.
Wow.
I thought I knew what was going on. Like and it was just like, no, they're playing with you.
Yeah.
It's like,
Like you feel
wow.
like you have this higher intelligence, you know what's going on in the spiritual realm. You're able to, you know, things that,
Hmm.
and Christians, they're closed-minded. They don't know what they're talking about. They think it's only Jesus. They're clueless, you
Hmm.
know? And then, wow, like it's just to know like that quickly how you're just humbled. Like you said, you are humbled immediately, realizing
Hmm.
how wrong you've been and
Yeah.
that Jesus is the truth. And yeah, so okay, so now what happens from here? Did you start reading the Bible? Did you start going to church? Like,
Oh, I started
yeah.
doing everything. Like I was like, that's just like my personality. Like if I'm passionate about something, like I dive in. So, but this time, like you said, it's like there's like the dark side of things and the light side of things, right? There's like so I was doing all this new age stuff and getting really into it, and then like once that conversion happened, like that's all I needed. I all my life, like I was like, God, like if you are real, like can you please give me like an experience where I will know for sure, right?
Mhm.
But I wasn't ready for it.
Right.
And I got it. Like I needed something crystal clear to happen. Because I mean, yeah, a lot of people's journeys are more gradual,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
But I needed that wake up call. So and I'm glad because like I just really we moved a week and a half later. So I literally physically left it all behind, right?
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
I moved down to like brighter, warmer Florida. Um, I didn't know what I was gonna do. I was like, am I even supposed to be a counselor anymore?
Mm.
I don't know. I don't know anything. I
Yeah.
literally don't know anything. Um, so I moved down here with like without knowing what I was gonna do for work. I ended up getting like the perfect job. Like the commute, the people, the type of work I was doing. It's just been like absolutely amazing. I didn't even know this type of counseling existed. Um, so I mean, he has a plan. Like
Yeah.
we see a fraction of it. So like just the perfect house, perfect location, the job. It took me a while to even like get onboarded. So I had like a month to just read the
Hmm.
Bible, um, I wanted to learn a little bit about like what happened to me, right? So
Yeah.
like, okay, this demonic oppression, like I wouldn't say I was possessed, like, but I had definitely demonic oppression where it was like, um, if I walked into like a Catholic church, right? Because my husband's Catholic and we dated for a long time, and I would go to mass sometimes.
Hmm.
And I would have like a visceral experience of being in the church, and like I didn't want to touch the holy water. I literally practically wanted to hiss. There was like something inside me that like wanted to like
Wow.
kind of, yeah, like being there. Like there was stuff in me that did not want to be at the church. So, yeah, I learned a little bit about the dark side of things, but then quickly I came across advice of like, don't stay here. Like
Yeah.
learn about the light, learn about the Bible and the theology and there's just so much beauty in it, right? Immerse yourself in the light. And so that's what I listened.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I dove right into all of that.
Wow, that's just beautiful. So, did your husband always have faith? Like, was he following Jesus the whole time when you guys were dating and everything?
So he had a positive upbringing with Catholicism.
Mhm.
His father's like very strong in his faith and really walks it well.
Mm,
I will say a great example of what it means to be a Christian.
yeah.
And it's just it's really cool looking back on things where like even in that sense like God has just been so amazing with like the father that I had and then the father-in-law that I have now and like
Mm,
the similarities that they have but like the opposite um forms of it. So it's pretty cool how that worked out. Um and but yeah, so for my husband, he he got distant from his faith in college,
mhm.
which often happens.
Yep.
Um we went to school in North Carolina and he was trying to go to mass, like he wanted to you stick with that.
Yeah.
But the he just felt like the priests and the congregation were kind of racist, honestly.
Mm, okay.
And he was just he was unsettled by like the hypocrisy of that, and that led to him distancing from it. So he kept his faith, but he wasn't going to church anymore.
Gotcha.
Really. And I was really against the church. Like that so that was like another symptom that I had was like physically if I was in the church, I had real reactions.
Yeah.
Um and if the church was brought up, like I it would just like initiate like these angry rants about
Wow.
Christianity and stuff like that. So kind of hard to like really be into your faith when your girlfriend is like,
Like
you know,
anti. Yeah.
yeah, feeling that strongly about things. But yeah, so this whole experience just like instantly brought us so much closer together. I mean, we were best friends in high school, and we started dating after we put in our college applications.
Yeah.
We had to like do a year of long distance. I ended up moving across the country and transferring schools. Uh,
Wow.
we've always had like a solid relationship, but it just had, I mean, I was carrying all this within me. So, of course that's going to impact things. But once that was gone, it was like the beauty of our relationship was exposed for what it really is. And yeah, so we moved down here. We're like, yeah, we're gonna get married. So like that was like an instant decision. Um, we instantly started going to church together, and it really, I mean, it's just been awesome.
So amazing. How long ago did all this happen?
This was like a year and a half ago.
Oh, it's so recent. Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. God, I'm telling you, God is doing so many amazing things. I feel like every testimony that I share, it's someone who's fairly recent, like within the last year and a half, 2 years, that these just
Hmm.
huge encounters with Jesus are occurring. And this, man, your story is incredible. So, do you still have any contact with your father?
No, yeah. So that actually popped up in my head too. I was like, yeah, I didn't mention that a few 4-ish years ago, my grandparents, so his parents, actually decided to get a restraining order against him.
Oh, wow.
And at the time it was definitely like, wow, like this is karma just like playing itself out, right? Like he's being abusive to them, right? Because they're elderly now, right? So his abusive behavior turned towards them and they're like, we're gonna get a restraining order. And they asked us if we would give a testimony or whatever, if
Mhm.
we could speak at court. And I had been wanting to distance myself from him for a while, but I just like didn't quite know how to like cut the cord, I
Mm.
guess. Not that there was really much of a relationship anyways, but he's my dad, it
Yeah.
is what it is. So, I ended up testifying, that's the word, testifying against
Okay.
him.
Yeah.
And I just laid everything out there.
Mm.
Like, I mean, it probably was like a nuclear bomb to him, but it was kind of cathartic for me to just be
Yeah.
like, this is my honest experience. And I got to say it in front of my grandparents too. So for me, it was like like this is really what I was put through
Yeah.
because of these decisions in the family. But I'm here to support you at the same time, you know.
Mm.
Um, and there was forgiveness and all that. So I haven't seen him since that day.
Wow.
I don't know where he is. I don't know
Mm.
where he went or anything. Um, and it's just been that way since.
Wow. Yeah, it's probably better off. That's sad though. It is sad, of course, but you need to kind of protect yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. I pray for him all the time, and if any of the
That's
listeners
good.
want to pray for
Yeah.
the conversion of his soul,
Yeah.
um, or his mental health, whatever's going on, I don't know what's going on with him,
Right. Right.
but you know, it's in God's hands. So
Yeah. So I just have two more. I know we're getting long here, but I have two more questions that I wanted to dive into just a little bit. So, ketamine therapy, I never tried it, but I know other people that have. So I'm curious now that you've turned to Jesus, what are your thoughts about ketamine therapy? Like what's actually happening there? And is there anything positive to it? Or what do you think about it now?
yeah, no, that's a good question. Um, I know it can lift the spiritual veil, right? I know that that's part of what it can do, and like with any psychedelic, right? So my current stance on it is to be
Hmm.
extremely careful in making a decision. I don't think I lean pretty conservative with it. But I'm not going to say like no one should do it per se because I don't know. I just know that I'm not interested in any of that. And Jesus was more than enough to heal my trauma, to heal my wounds. Um, there's still some things here and there that like um, need healing, but I mean, it's nothing like on the scale that it was. And it builds our relationship, like it really is a relationship with Jesus and not a quick fix,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, what are you trying to get out of ketamine? And is it really God that's leading you to it? Because we can be so easily tricked.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And yeah, the relationship is so real because you're not going to have 100% healing overnight. You're just not. Like, there's always going to be things that you're still struggling with, still dealing with from whatever, from all the things we've let in throughout our life, from the world. We're still in the world,
Mhm.
and we're not perfect. But my goal is to just get into deeper and deeper relationship with him and become more and more like him every day. That's what I pray for.
Yeah. Yeah, no, we're
So
not meant to be perfect, right? We're meant to
right.
kind of get out of the way and let him in, let his
Yeah,
perfection in and guide our life and all that.
exactly. Exactly. Okay, so my last question maybe is regarding counseling. So do you still do some form of counseling now?
Yeah, yeah. So I was doing addiction counseling for a while, which was really cool because for a lot of people it has like um, maybe like the 12 steps, which is
Hmm.
pretty Christian,
Yeah.
honestly.
Yeah.
Um, And even if they weren't into the 12 steps, there's just this like, I need to surrender,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
So
Admitting
working
that you
with
can't do
people,
it alone. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Healing happens in community and in
Hmm.
connection, oftentimes with a higher power.
Hmm.
Um, but it's given me um time to reflect on like the spiritual side of counseling.
Hmm.
And like because I was like, okay, well, because I was reevaluating everything,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
after this
yeah.
whole experience, I was like, I know nothing, so I need to relearn everything,
Yeah.
including psychology, right? Because like
Mhm.
I practically majored in psychology, and I was like, well, uh-oh, the founding fathers of psychology were atheist
Mhm.
or agnostic, at least, and like into subconscious stuff, and that's the foundation of it, right? So I on my own, I was like relearning those things and like what do I need to throw out and what's okay to stay and what is the Christian take on human psychology, right? What can we learn from what the Bible tells us? Um, what would Christian counseling look like? There's different types of Christian counseling. Is this where God wants me to go? So, and just being like, where does the somatic work fall into that? Where does body-based and emotional-based counseling fall into this? Like, God made our emotions, God made our body.
Mhm.
Um, can I keep doing this? And as time has gone on, I've um, gotten more comfortable with the spiritual again, right? Like you
Mhm.
said.
Yep.
So, I I've actually been God's been moving me back towards that,
Mhm.
right? Like there's a huge difference between worshiping and idolizing the body and like the wisdom of the body, right?
Yeah.
And like all this subconscious stuff. And and utilizing mindfulness to notice what's going on in our body
Mhm.
and to be present with our emotions and to invite Jesus into it,
Mhm.
right? Or use our imagination to like to imagine that Jesus is sitting in between me as the counselor and the client,
Mm.
right? And what I've noticed is even in sessions with clients that are not Christian,
Mhm.
when and this usually happens when like a client's sharing something and I'm like, oh boy, like
Mhm.
I can't fix this. I don't even know what to say, honestly. I'm just like, okay, Jesus, like, I know you're here. I'm stepping out of the way. Like, if I don't feel like I need to say something, I'm not going to say something. I trust you. I trust your guidance. And as soon as I do that, like, something shifts in the room, in the client, and they just like, they have a breakthrough or like
Mm.
they let out these emotions that they were holding in. Or they go from like just talking and talking to like dipping into that emotional experience and like letting stuff out. And it's just so cool to like have those little spiritual experiences, even with people who they don't have the faith, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
because they still have the willingness, right? They're still showing up for a session.
Right.
And then for people who do have the faith, it's that much more fun to work with them and
Yeah.
rewarding, to be like, to, to invite more directly the Holy Spirit into the session.
Right.
So, yeah, I've been able to kind of see, like, play around with like, okay, what type of therapy does God really want me to do? And it has been like, yeah, like I can work with the body, right?
Mhm.
The body was made to be holy,
Yep.
and our emotions are God given. They
Mhm.
have a purpose,
Mhm.
and God wants to be there in the session,
Yeah.
right? Like healing occurs in connection,
Mhm.
right? Always in connection to God because all good things come from Him.
Mhm.
But He also made us to be in community and connection too,
Right.
right? So when you have a session in connection with God, in connection with a counselor, it's just like beautiful things can happen. And in New Age, it was like doing New Age counseling, like
Mm.
therapy work.
Yeah.
It felt like so much pressure on me to heal people,
Mhm.
even though they say it's not, right? It's like, just like trust the process and nothing needs to happen and all this type of stuff. But now I really know that. Like I really know it's not about me. If anything, it's me stepping aside more. The more I get out of the way, the more space he takes up.
Mhm.
The more beautiful the session is. So
Wow.
I've actually moved towards doing my own mental health coaching,
Mm.
and for Christians, like Christians and Catholics. I'm really, yeah, excited to work with people who are so open to this. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. Oh my gosh. This is wild because the reason I ask about that specifically is that we're in December now, and in January I'm starting school to get my master's to become a licensed professional counselor.
Oh,
And
nice.
I want to do Christian counseling. So I'm just at the very beginning of my journey with it, but it was definitely brought to me by God. There's no doubt in my mind. I've gotten just multiple confirmations that this is the track He wants me to take. Where it's going to lead, I have no idea yet. I'm just
Mhm.
going to get the degree and take it from there. But I'm really looking forward to it. I'm starting at Liberty University. I'm going to do it online.
That's so exciting.
Yeah, yeah, thanks. And
Wow.
actually, what's crazy is right before this episode, so the one that comes out before yours is going to be a woman named Dr. Natalie Atwell, who is also a counselor, a Christian counselor. So it's just wild the way God does this. So it's just the
Yeah.
topics that are coming up. But yeah, so oh my goodness, so grateful that you shared your story with me and with this audience. I'm bursting. I don't even know. I'm just so grateful that you found me and that God saved you in such a dramatic way, like just so instantaneously. I'm just, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having this platform. I mean, it was such a lift to be, of course, saved by Jesus. And I mean, if you can imagine, like being being raised like you're going to be the savior of the universe, that's a crippling amount of weight to carry, right?
Mhm.
Even when you don't like consciously believe it, right?
Yeah.
Um, but for him to like close that door completely, and for me to share this story, it's just like it's a weight being lifted, right? Like I mean, he obviously like healed me overnight, but there was so much hesitancy to share it, because it is odd. It's an odd story. There's no doubt about it. And being in the counseling field, helping other people, it's just yeah, it's a little bit, it's vulnerable, but it feel when you share a story, it has a beginning, middle, and end,
Mm.
right? So it really feels like, yeah, there's an end, right? The Jesus story is over.
Yeah, yeah. And Jesus is
Right.
the beginning and the end. He's the Alpha and the Omega, so it's just
Yeah, yeah.
coming right back to him in the end. Which is just awesome. I'm so happy for you and, welcome to the family of God, the sister in
Yeah, yeah. Thank
Christ.
you so
So,
much,
yeah.
Rebecca. This was really, it was you made it easy to
Oh, good. I'm glad. I'm glad. All right. Well, thank you again. So grateful to have you here.
think.
Thank you so much for sticking around to the end of the episode. I want to let you know that there are 3 different ways that you can get in touch and be a part of the Finding Fulfillment Together community. The first way is through our New Age to Jesus Zoom calls and our Telegram chat. So I have a group of people that have gone from having New Age beliefs to now knowing Jesus that have come together, and we meet twice a month on Zoom where we talk all about our journeys, what we're going through, spiritual warfare. We have so much in common. It's such an amazing group of people. Love for you to be a part of that. Just click the link in the link tree to sign up. And you can also click the link for the Telegram chat, which is just open all the time. Same group of people there that you can communicate with on a regular basis. So see both of those links in the link tree. The second way to get in contact and to be a part of community is through one-on-one calls with me, which are completely free. So if you just want someone to talk to, if you have questions, if you're kind of struggling with faith in Jesus, you're coming out of New Age, or just in general, just want someone to talk to about Christian faith, maybe you don't have a lot of people in your life that you can talk to, please call me. I love all kinds of discussions. Even if it's not about Jesus, if you just need a friend, want someone to talk to, my calendar is open. You can find the link to book time with me in my link tree as well. And last but not least, I have a Facebook community for women. So, sisters in Christ to come together and share our faith, talk about Jesus, support each other. And you can find that link in the link tree as well. All of these are free. All of these are just opportunities for us to have community and support each other. And I hope that you take advantage, and I hope to see you there. And with that, I just want to say goodbye. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next time.